Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Second and Saints. John Hendricks alongside Ross Jackson. Day 16 of Saints training camp is in the books. Ross, I exchanged pleasantries, but I feel like we just kind of need to dive into it, right?
Yeah, I think so, man. I think we're good here.
Yeah, another interesting day. I'd say, offensively it was interesting. I think Trevor Penning is still the biggest topic, right? Again, we talked about him on Tuesday's show. Had to check the calendar for a second, but there's some moments today that just wasn't there, like giving up some pressures. He's on the ground a good bit. We talked about it, saying that we're a little bit concerned, but still the offense, the first team offense, was able to get some good things going early, but maybe not so good on the end of half sequence. They're a little bit sloppy there. Some penalties. Officiating crews were out there as well. Carl Cheffer's crew. But kind of what is your overall assessment of day 16?
Yeah, I think that what it really showed you is that the scheme can only hide so much on the offensive line. That there are times where what we really saw in terms of the team starting out strong, they were working first and second down situations, that entire first team rep. So that gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of play action and all these other things. But then when you get to third down and 7, there's no play action call for that. When you get to your hurry up at the end of the first half, you're not really running a lot of play action. You're doing a lot of straight dropbacks because it's all throwing situations, obvious passing downs and things like that. And so that's where you saw a little bit more of the struggle on the offensive line. You notice that the Saints offense started out strong, working on those first and second downs. And then as they got into the more passing focused situational work, then we saw the defense close the gap a bit and maybe jump ahead. I don't think that there's been a single day, John, that I haven't written down sack by 99 all practice long since he made his debut. But I think that was like my biggest takeaway was that, I get the idea that, hey, this scheme can be very player friendly. It can be very offensive line friendly, but there are going to be times where the scheme isn't going to be able to save you. And you've got to be a better offensive lineman than the defensive lineman that you're lined up across. And I don't know that we've necessarily seen that at particular spots on the offensive line, or really one particular spot on the offensive line. I think that's the Trevor Penning conversation.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting because Dennis Allen also pointed out left guard that nobody's really jumped up. Like, it was weird because he said that comment, but he also made the comment saying that he still feels like he has the right 5 guys. So yeah, right. I don't know, read between the lines there, but yeah, you're right. On first and second down, when they were working those teams, they did 5 team periods plus a developmental period today. And so look, they worked on those situations early on, some down and distance, but then when they did third down drills, they did like so down and distance where they started like 3rd and 2. Now let's back it up to 3rd and 5. Let's do 3rd and 8. Let's do 3rd and 9. Let's do 3rd and 11, and all these different scenarios. And I think that's where kind of things went to the wayside in some aspects. And then that end of half sequence, I mean, it was just like there was some, don't get me wrong, there's some beautiful connections there, like the Chris Olave pipeline. That looked good. So good to have Rashid Shaheed back. Like that was one of the biggest things, I think. In ESPN's Catherine Terrell, she was actually sitting right next to us and she's like, that's something that's kind of been missing. And it's right. It just proves that he's such a commodity for this offense. But, again, the offensive line continues to be the focal point. And they had some good run success on the day. I thought there was a lot more runs that were getting to the second level. I liked the flow and the tempo of offense. But, again, it wasn't without flaw. And, again, I'm not suggesting that it should have been. But I just think that the offensive line at this point, we got a couple more practices, right? And then the preseason game, and you kind of brought up the point about like A.T. Perry not doing so well. Then he has the great game, and then now he's practicing solid. Like, is there still a hope for Trevor Penning here? Like, is this just kind of like they're just going to stick with what they got and do what they do?
Yeah, I think that there's always going to be hope for Trevor Penning until they decide that there isn't anymore. And then, that hope, that opportunity will eventually be taken away from him if he's not able to make it all pan out. But I expect that this team will be patient with him, just like they were patient with Marcus Davenport, just like they've been patient with Peyton Turner, just like they've been patient with others. I expect that same thing from the Saints coaching staff when it comes to Trevor Penning. And will it pay off? Will it not pay off? I think that's going to be the big question. But for right now, like, this is definitely what you would expect to see for New Orleans. And especially one of the other things that Dennis Allen talked about was that, behind Penning, it's not like anybody's really jumped up and said, hey, right tackle's mine now. We haven't really seen that either. And so at some point, someone has to step up and win that role. And it very well can still be Penning. There's no doubt about that. For all the Penning bad that you hear all over the place, it's not like anybody has stepped up and performed better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing that makes you kind of feel like, all right, yeah, there's still time. There's still hope for this all to pan out, as long as they continue to give him the opportunities. The question will be at what point, the bigger question for me will be, at what point do they no longer feel that it is the most conducive way to move forward, continuing to give him those opportunities? Is there some point where they kind of say, okay, no, now we have to pivot to something else?
Yeah, and look, we don't want to make it sound like we're picking on Trevor Penning, because we watch him like a hawk, you know what I'm saying? And we're just reporting what we see. Like, he had some good moments of run support. He did have some good reps in pass protection, but it's just one of those things when a player, the pressure comes and you see what side it's from or who the player is. I mean, you're just going to put 2 and 2 together. No, it's like in one breath. Yeah, Chase Young, Carl Granderson, those two are beasts. That's good news, right? But when it is a consistent theme, that's what's concerning. And look, you go back and watch the Cardinals tape. I saw there's a cut up of it. It wasn't that good. You know what I mean? And look, I think the thing is, the Saints know it. The offensive line coaches know it. Trevor Penning knows it. It's just one of those things where he's got to respond. He's got to pull himself together, pull him out of this hole. But you're right. Nobody has taken the job from him. And so they've tried Oli Udoh. We talked about it on the previous show, that he really hasn't, wowed us in training camp much. Landon Young's a guy that they're putting all over the line. And so it's a point now where if they don't figure this out, and I think Dennis Allen even alluded to this a little bit, talking about keeping their eyes on other players potentially that could be open and such, which is football 101. This is part of the player pro personnel that they do and such. But again, it's the blemish here on the Saints offense. And I mean, the thing is, that's going to take up all the storylines, right? Whether it's rightly or wrongly, Trevor Penning is going to be the biggest storyline, because this offensive line has to be what it needs to be. You know what I mean?
Yep, that's exactly right. I mean, especially with a team that's like looking to improve over on the offensive side and all those other things, like that's going to be under a microscope, and all that. And I think that, like, we've talked about this already, but when people talk about, like, should the Saints try to trade for a right tackle and things like that, it's really tough to do that at this time. But getting closer to the roster cuts, that's really the time where that makes sense, because maybe a team is dealing with a numbers battle, and there's just kind of that word of attrition that happens with that. And so as they're banting about the numbers in terms of, do we keep this many offensive linemen, this many defensive linemen, this many corners and safeties, whatever, then maybe somebody is looking at, like, okay, well, we'll keep this many offensive linemen if we can trade and get something back for this player. That's really where you start to see, like, the numbers game kind of work out in favor of players potentially being moved. But as of right now, with 2 preseason games still left, 2 weeks of preseason practices, plus the week off and another week of practices before week 1 begins, teams ain't going to be ready to trade off a potential even depth, like star depth caliber or top depth caliber type of offensive player right now, because you never know if you're going to have an injury in these next couple of weeks, everything like that. So you really kind of have to wait if you want to start to look at other options that are outside the building, but in someone else's building, until those roster cuts, because either they'll be cut free and you could try to pick them up in waivers, or if you want to ensure that you got them, you might find a team that's willing to maybe not move on from a player at roster cuts, but willing to trade that player so that they get something back. That's going to be the time to kind of look at those types of possibilities. So until then, every opportunity is ahead of Trevor Penning to change everybody's minds. And I still think one solid game where he realizes, oh, this technique stuff, I get it. It could change everything for him. So I'm hoping we see that. I'm hoping we see that over the course of the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I tell you what, though, if I'm the Saints, I'm making sure I got a very distinct
100%.
list of players that I'm looking at. And look, I mean, we saw guys like Cam Irving last year come in and step in and do things in the offensive line. And I'm not saying that's the direction they need to go or anything like that, because you're just putting a Band-Aid on a problem that's going to be bigger. And look, we've talked about on previous shows that we think that, at first we were talking about a pass rusher being the first need that they have in the draft. And now I'm not so sure. I think it might be right tackle. You know what I mean?
Like it's back to offensive line again,
which is unfortunate. I mean, you could still do free agency and all this other stuff, but like this is, it's not something that you're just putting some Flex Seal on it and hoping it works. And we're not sponsored by Flex Seal or anything like that. But
yet.
Not yet. But it's unsettling. And of course, like I said, it's going to dominate the storylines. It's going to be under microscope. We're at the point now where fans have seen a preseason game, so they're going to have their own opinions and stuff. And so we're going to just give it to you as much as we can from what we see on it. But still, couple days afterwards, it's just not where it needs to be. And so hopefully he can get it right, because the Saints need to get this right. So, man, I thought where I pivot from here is Dennis Allen's comments. The competition comments are one thing, like, Blake Groupie, the kicker competition, and like Lou Headley talking about punter competition and stuff. But I can't make evaluations on players that aren't here.
Yeah,
that really felt directed at, Kendre Miller, who worked off to the side again today. But, the question was asked. I hadn't seen him since day one. Again, guy with the got hurt in drills. But guys like him and Nick Saliveri, this is, if we said it before, if they can't get back to practice against, when they get back to Louisiana, it's going to be a tough look for him. But, man, he's in the doghouse. Like, Kendre Miller feels like he's in the doghouse for sure.
Yeah, certainly feels like it. And it's not going to get any easier for him either, because again, we keep seeing days where, like today, Jamal Williams, great day. James Robinson, good day. Jordan Mims, good day. Jacob Cabote. I think Jacob Cabote had a better day than Jordan Mims today. Jordan Mims had like some struggles in the passing game and stuff like that. But man, like it's just, it makes it even tougher for a guy like Kendre Miller, who, to be fair, is dealing with injury. And you could look at that one way or another in terms of injury proneness and all that kind of stuff. But, to remove the injury out of it, the guys that are on the field are having a really good camp. And the guy that's not on the field doesn't get the opportunity to have that really good camp. And I think that makes things really tough. We've spoken all camp long so far about the gap in between Alvin Kamara and the other running backs. And it would be so easy to find a spot in the middle of that gap, because that gap is so wide and he's not able to take advantage of that opportunity at all. And that stinks, man. Like, he's got to get back out on the field pretty quickly, but he can't rush it, because what if he rushes to get back out on the field and he has another injury? It's just going to put him right back in an even worse situation. And so, it's a tough balance to crack. And I don't envy Kendre Miller in this situation at all.
Yeah, I'm no physician, but I turned to you and I said, they're going back to Louisiana, where the injuries, like these pre-existing injuries, I don't know if the Louisiana heat's going to make any difference with it. I don't know that. But if you're carrying over some of these pre-existing injuries and going back, and you have to deal with the heat, which leads to cramping, have to put on IVs, all these other things, like, I just don't know if it's going to bode well for you. You know what I mean? And so, again, that's just a observation, right? I mean, I don't know if that's true or not, but again, Kendre Miller's got to get back on the field. He also kind of was a little bit, I guess, with Jalen Ford's injury too, because he left practice, and Dennis Allen said it's the other hamstring. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I read too much into that, but it's tough with some of these soft tissue injuries that this team is having to deal with. I mean, it's unfortunate, but at the same breath, Rashid Shaheed, Bub Means out of the red non-contact jerseys today. That was a good sign. They had 6-7 players working off to the side. So like the health is trending in the right direction, but it's one of those things where you take 2 steps forward and you take a step back. You know what I mean? Like, there was a scare with Cesar Ruiz today that we for sure thought looked really bad, and thought he was going to leave the field, but it's just another day, another injury. It's just like this team, I don't think is snake bitten like another team that's in the conference that's dealing with stuff. Oh man. Yeah. Major wolf, but still it's unsettling and it's unfortunate, but hopefully these guys can turn it around.
Yeah, Cesar Ruiz, by the way, made it back out on the practice field,
Yep.
finished the day, looked fine. It was good. It was all good there. The Jalen Ford thing is an interesting one because this is always the concern when it comes to hamstring injuries or soft tissue injuries, is that it happens on one side of the body. Then when you finally get out there and if you're compensating too much because you're worried about re-injuring that same hamstring, your likelihood of overcompensating and injuring the other one kind of ticks up. And I think that might be what happened with Jalen Ford, which kind of stinks. So hopefully that second hamstring injury or that other hamstring injury doesn't end up being too much. Dennis Allen always talks about grades of soft tissue injuries, grades of hamstring injuries. Hopefully this is a lower grade for it. But yeah, but otherwise, I mean, we did still get some other positive stuff. I mean, we saw Pete Werner continue to tick up in terms of his, kind of being around the team, working off to the side. Mario Davis doing individual drills as well as walkthroughs, things like that. Last person that has to prove anything when it comes to recovering from injury and stuff like that is Mario Davis, but yet he has found his way back out there. We didn't see Alvin Kamara today for the second day, but I'm not super concerned about that, if I'm being honest.
Sure.
If I'm the Saints, I'm like, yo, you're good. Like we'll see you in New Orleans kind of a thing. And if I'm Alvin Kamara, I'm willing to accept that because if I've got back tightness, right, and I also have an ongoing contract negotiation, I don't want that back tightness to turn into a back injury, especially a back injury for a running back. Like he would never live that down in those contract negotiations. That would not be a good one to walk in with. And so I don't blame sort of the caution of that 2 days of practice missed so far. We'll see if he's back out there tomorrow or Friday, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to not see him until they're back in New Orleans. That would not surprise me at all. It's not like he's going to play in the preseason. You're good. You know what I mean? So we'll see which way they go with it. But I would understand from both sides of the equation, the team and the player side, if they played it super, super cautious with Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, and DA kind of even talked about it because he's like, he mentioned DeMario Davis. He's like, I've been with him since 2018, so I know what the player, I know about him and all this other stuff. Same thing could be said with Alvin, but these other guys, it's tough. And like, hopefully they don't rush it back, like you said, to worry about having to get re-injured because that'd be the worst thing. But man, these final roster cuts are going to end up being really interesting for this team. And so I don't know. It's unsettling. So, one transaction today, Kyler Ball got waived in favor of Mason Fairchild. Michael Jacobson wasn't out there. I was told it has nothing to do with his performance. It's just kind of one of those things where they got injured at tight end. They needed a tight end, so they got him. He's somebody that was there with the team before. But look, it's day 16. I thought Derek Carr had a pretty good day. 17 of 23, I think, is what I had for his charting. Hainer was 7-11. Not the convenience store, but 7 of 11. And then Rattler, I think I had 5 of 8, and he had a touchdown late, a really beautiful hookup to Kevin Austin Jr. in the developmental period. So, overall, I think the quarterbacks, they did pretty well, but I think where I was going with the tough looks is the rehuddles we continue to see, the false start penalties. We saw offensive pass interference on Bub Means. We saw some holding calls. It's just not as crisp as you want it. And I understand it's still training camp and preseason, all this other stuff. This is the time that you want to get it cleaned up. But, did you see kind of the same things on it? Do you kind of just say, okay, well, offense had a good day, but asterisk, here's what I kind of saw. Because I thought the defense played, pretty well at times too.
Yeah, my thing was it kind of varied on situation. I thought that the offense performed well in its early down work, which was good to see because that's where they need to improve going into 2024. And the defense performed well in the late down work and in those time down works and stuff like that. So that's kind of, for me, it was about the split between the situation and which side of the ball elevated, right? Which side of the ball was able to perform there. And so that's kind of my takeaway on it in terms of what I saw. And then in the developmental reps, I thought Kevin Austin was really solid in those. And that's a receiver that, like, if I had to outline, and in fact, I did this on Locked On Saints the other day, I had to outline kind of like the locks, the people that are up next and then the people that are battling for a position within or a spot within that wide receiver room. The locks are obvious in Olave and Shaheed. I think the guys that are up next are Wilson and Perry. I think that they've had good performances here recently. And I kind of put Kevin Austin as like really close to the top of the conversation of the guys that are battling for a spot. He's been really impressive so far throughout camp. I was surprised that he didn't get more targets in the preseason game. Going back and watching the tape, I thought he had some moments where that target could have been there for him. But I'm curious to see him going up against San Francisco and what it could be as he continues to build up some connections with these guys and Spencer Rattler as well as Jake Haener. And the other thing that I thought was interesting too is that the Saints did an end of half 0-0 timed drive, 1 minute and 30 seconds. It was Derek Carr and Spencer Rattler were the only two that got those reps. So I wonder if that's an indication that Spencer Rattler will start against the San Francisco 49ers, or at least be the last quarterback on the field in the first half against the San Francisco 49ers. I'm curious if that's an indication of that, but that might just be me reading too much into it.
No, I think that's a good call. I think, most of the times, like when we go to a Friday practice, what we see in walkthroughs is pretty much who's going to play, who's going to start, who might be inactive, stuff like that. So I think that's still a tell, if you will. And so I would buy that for sure. Look, I think when you talk about Kevin Austin Jr., he could probably edge out a Stanley Morgan Jr. You know what I mean? Not that it's saying he definitely has or anything, but I think that's a close one to call. And you see what Kevin Austin Jr. is doing in the passing game and his upside on special teams. That's what Stanley Morgan Jr. does too. And so again, Austin Jr. has had more of the flashes. It hasn't been without blemish, but that's going to be fascinating to me to watch. And then Rattler, I think that this is an indication, because technically Jake Haener was number 2 today, right? And so Spencer Rattler did get that, but Haener got some more reps here and there, especially in the developmental period and stuff. So they're kind of balancing this out. But, I think Rattler should be, if the Carr and the starters are going to get at least one series, maybe 1 or 2 series, it's definitely going to be Rattler's, race to go the distance or go through the half, I feel like. But again, we'll kind of see. I feel like that's what we're going to see. And look, everybody's excited to see it, right? And look, while I have everybody, A, don't forget to like and subscribe, but B, please don't fall for and believe everything that you see on social media. Like, there is this horrible rumor going around that the Vikings, who granted are going through it right now, Derek Carr, that they have interest in Derek Carr. A, no. B, Derek Carr has a no trade clause in his contract, so that doesn't even work, right? And he's here. And so please just be smarter about it. Like, it's so crazy how people believe so much stuff. But anyways, I digress off that soapbox.
Well, I want to say too.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to say too on that. No, you're good. I just want to say too on that like this gives you a really good indication of like people that aren't familiar with other rosters and things like that too. Like, not only does Derek Carr have a no trade clause, not only would the New Orleans Saints not trade away a guy that they just restructured, that also doesn't make any sense. But also, like, the Minnesota Vikings didn't necessarily look at JJ McCarthy as their starter. Like, it was still a conversation between him and Sam Darnold. And so JJ McCarthy going down for a season or for his rookie season just means that they go to the other guy that they were looking at in Sam Darnold. Like, it doesn't even make sense that they would be interested in trading for somebody and everything. Yeah. Like, it's just, it's such a weird.
That's a good call. That is just a good call. So spot on, Ross. Spot on. What were some? I guess. Well, I was going to ask some of your takeaways, but I also wanted to bring up. We saw some pretty good hitting today. Like,
oh yeah,
we saw some really good. Like, I can't believe like Rico Payton putting that hit on Adam Prentice on the sideline. Like, that was that got the defense like on another level today, which I can appreciate that stuff. Man, and then like DeMarco Jackson setting the tone early, stopping James Robinson, kind of like hovering over him, hitting him with a big one, and just kind of standing over him. And then like Hooper getting smacked. That one was one that's like, ooh, shoulder, don't do that. But,
yeah, right. Yeah, be careful.
Yeah, please. Like, it's cool, but man, this but look, a guy like Rico Payton, man, he's starting to make more plays. Like, I think he's somebody that's bouncing off that preseason and such. And again, he's starting to make more plays in practice, getting some looks at the first team and stuff. And like, I don't want to say he's unsung hero or that he's definitely going to be there, but it's good to see a guy who maybe had a tough start to training camp, right?
Yeah.
Starting to put it together. And I think that's the part of A, the player learning from good coaches, and B, the player applying what the coaches are teaching him as well.
Completely agreed. I think of all of those I look at Rico Payton and A.T. Perry kind of in the same bucket, right? Like these are guys that kind of struggled through training camp at the beginning. Then they had great games against the Arizona Cardinals, and they've just been able to continue that on. We didn't see A.T. Perry, of course, today. He's dealing with that ankle injury. Hopefully he gets back out there at some point this week and is able to play against San Francisco, because you'd love to see him follow up that performance from Arizona as quickly as possible. But we'll see how things go. My favorite of those hits, though, was DeMarco Jackson. And the reason why is because, and John, you'll be able to attest to this, or you'll be happy to attest to this. DeMarco is like just the most calm dude. Never looks bothered. He's never like overly excited. He's never overly upset. It's just not his vibe. Like he's very just even keel, collected dude. Now on the football field, he's overly excited and all those other things, of course. But it's just his demeanor as a general person is very calm, very even keel. And so to see him not only lay somebody out, but then kind of stand over them for a moment, so good. So good. I love seeing that. Yeah. And again, it's another example of competition, right? It's another example of like how charged these guys get during practice. But of course, be careful. You're not trying to hurt anybody. You're not trying to hit anyone. And when we talk about people hitting each other, we're talking about like a thump and stuff like that. We're not talking about like a full-on tackle. Like these guys are not tackling. This is practice, all that stuff. Like it's all good. But like, yeah, it's just good to see the physicality for sure. And to see it from a guy like DeMarco Jackson just kind of shows you what the physicality amongst all of that defense is right now.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember when we had to tell people that DeMarco Jackson is going to be on the roster too because of stuff he does. I'm not trying to pump your chest. I'm just saying, like, everybody forgets a guy like DeMarco Jackson, but we see him in practice. We see him fill in the DeMario role. Like, we see him taking the snaps there. Like, he's a valuable piece of this puzzle that nobody really talks about, and honestly, nobody knows about in some aspects. And so it's unfortunate, but I like seeing that too. It was just good plays, and we saw some good plays offensively too. Like again, Shaheed, Olave, Foster Moreau getting a little bit more involved. The Taysom fullback run, fullback dive for Taysom, which I think he got in. I think that would have been a touchdown. But like the Shaheed catch with the yak, I think he would have got a touchdown on that one as well. But still a balanced approach, I think, is the biggest thing I would take away and sum up, is that you saw the offense win some, you saw the defense win some, whether it was a sack pressure or the offense getting big plays out, maybe not the biggest plays that they wanted to have today or the biggest success, but I still felt like it was a balanced approach. Anything else that maybe stood out for you on day 16 as we kind of wind down here?
Yeah, well, let me highlight Rashid Shaheed a little bit too, because his return coming back and not having the non-contact jersey, and you could see immediately the value that he brings to this team. He had a great kick return as well that, John, we think would have been a touchdown. Like, we're pretty sure.
I don't know who's going to catch Rashid Shaheed if he gets open in the field like that. Like the blocking was superb. I thought that, he's a guy that obviously you're all pro return man. So hey, this is what I did in college, so I would have given him the benefit of the doubt. I thought he would have been gone. Yeah. I think the coaches believe it too.
100%. So he had that one. Then he had this great kind of 23-yard catch and run from Jake Haener. It was on a slant going right to left, catches the ball, climbs across the entire field all the way over to the left side, is kind of able to walk in. It would have been a touchdown there. Got a lot of cheers. Keith Williams was super excited about it. Derek Carr was super excited about it. It was awesome. And then later on this like 3rd and 15, they take the snap. Derek Carr throws a screen, the third and long screens. We love them. To Rashid Shaheed, and he picks up probably, it was about 3rd and 15. And he picks up probably about 13 yards on that screen. And so if you think about it, if you're in a down 2 type situation in that drive toward the end of the game, you throw that screen, all of a sudden 13 yards can get you into field goal range or deeper into field goal range. If you're down 6, 4th and 2 that you just created, way better than 4th and 15. And so I really liked the value that you saw from Rashid Shaheed's return, who I agree with our good friend Catherine Terrell that, like, they clearly missed that, man, because there's some real value there. So I'm excited. I'm excited about him.
Yeah, and shout out to his family. We got to meet them recently, and like they were just the nicest people. Auntie O,
what a support system he's got.
He's got a great support system. So I know that we've met some people. We met Kyle Hergel's parents today too, which they were really
They're
great
awesome.
too. And so, yeah, loved hearing that. They said they came down from Toronto and all
Travel.
that stuff. So, yeah, it's travel. It's cool to see that. Like, I know no fans, but they do have some like friends and family and stuff like that. And so you got a lot of parents or spouses and families and stuff that come support their guys and stuff. So that was cool to see. But man, Ross, time flies as always on here. Anything else that you really kind of want to hit on from day 16 before we kind of get out of here? A little bit different format for everybody, but you get that here and there from us.
Just excited for day 17. I'm curious to see how they continue to build on this because it was a really physical practice. So I'm curious to see what the rest of it looks like. Do they ramp up or do they ramp down moving forward to the rest of the week?
Yeah, I agree. And like you mentioned, the Shaheed hookup, I got to give it to Jay Kaner because he threaded that ball there. Very,
great
very,
throw.
very, very great. Yes. But, and so I don't want to think that we're trying to skip over or forget anybody. As always, make sure you go on Locked On, check out Ross's show. He breaks everything down. And if you want the full write-ups and stuff, go to Saints News Network, si.com/NFL/Saints, or, Saints on SI. That's the new Earl URL that we're using and stuff on that. So yeah. And I'm starting to break down camp pieces. I hadn't got any particular feedback, but trying to break them up in pieces where it's not so much to take at one point, but hopefully that's good. But Ross, my man, anything you want to plug, promote before we do get out of here?
Just that LouisianaSports.net. It's set to go live this weekend. So make sure you come and hang out with us during. I'll be writing a bunch of pieces and stuff like that during the San Francisco game. I'll be back in New Orleans during the San Francisco game, so be able to put a lot of stuff out during that time. So just make sure you come over, show some love, show some support for our new venture over at LouisianaSports.net.
Awesome. Good. Love it. Yes. Please support Ross. So please support him on his other endeavors and all that other stuff. That's how we work over here.
And
man.
John on his.
Yeah, we'll see how that all plays out, but I appreciate that for sure. Well, guys, that's going to do it for us. Day 16 of Saints training camp in the books. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe, spread the word, do the links. You guys know this by now, so we really appreciate all the support we do get from you and that you just take the time out of your day to spend it with us. So on behalf of Ross Jackson, that's going to do it for us. I'm John Hendricks signing out for another episode of Second and Saints. We will talk at you on Thursday.